If you're feeling stuck and you have an interest in learning more about opportunities in South Africa regarding visas, permits, long-term residency, and all of the above, you are in the right place. Welcome to the live stream. You all know me, but if you don't, I am Ashley on this channel, Ashley in Africa. I share my experience of doing business, living, traveling, and doing business and hosting events like these here on the continent of Africa. Welcome to the channel if you're new, and welcome back if you're not. We have a special guest today. So if you've seen the title of our stream, we are talking all things visa, permits, mastery, right? Like, how can you learn what you need to know for you to have an opportunity to travel long-term, potentially move and do business on the continent of Africa, specifically here in South Africa. So we have a special guest, Kristen. Kristen is joining us from IBN Immigration Solutions. She is head of client acquisition. And I want to tell you a little bit about IBN. So IBN, they are official sponsor for the Travel Move Do Business South Africa virtual conference. And so we're so happy to work with them. But more than that, they are the leading immigration consultancy firm based here in South Africa. They specialize in immigration and visa services for individuals and entrepreneurs and businessmen. They were established back in 2000, and they assist clients navigating South Africa's complex immigration laws and regulations. So welcome, Kristen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks a lot.
Fantastic. So we're going to be talking. Yeah, we're so happy to have you. We're going to be talking more about visas and permitting. But first, will you just tell us a little bit about maybe some of the misconceptions that people have when it comes to knowing more about visas, permits, and, residency options?
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me here today. Just maybe briefly, I'm also not South African, I'm German. I came here in 2010, met my South African husband on my second day here. So I walked that whole path of immigration myself. So when I really speak to clients, I really speak from a personal point of view as well, which I think often really helps. Because it was a long journey for me, but I'm tomorrow collecting my South African ID finally. But just maybe that as a background, because I remember calling the South African embassy in Germany initially when I then wanted to apply for a permit, and the information they gave me was so poor. They were not very nice to me on the phone. I ended up crying, and I still always think about it today. That was my journey with immigration, and today I'm sitting on the other side, making sure people don't have the experience I had all those years ago, and trying to make it as easy as possible. And I think the biggest misconception or a big problem is always that, people think they can find all the information on the embassy website and they can just run with it, which is true. There's a lot of information out there, but it's often outdated. Sometimes it's not accurate. Sometimes, yes, the checklist is provided, but what does it actually mean practically? I think that is a big thing. And what I often see, and I think it's especially with American clients, they come here, Americans come here and believe everything can be handled in South Africa, from within South Africa. And when I then have to break them the news that unfortunately they have to go back to the US to submit, it's obviously a massive issue, right? If you've brought over your family already, your child is in school, the dog has been flown over, you don't have a home anymore. So that's why I think it's so important to speak to experts, beforehand. And on that as well, there is a lot of information out there, which is great. There's a lot of, YouTube, Facebook groups, all of that. But what I often see is that the information very often is about 70%, 80% right. Or it's very much based on the circumstances. So there's some great groups that I have learned things, in the past, but I often read things and I'm like, oh, this is so wrong. This was maybe for your specific case. So that I think bothers me the most, that a lot of, with anything probably, with a lot of information that's out there, it's just not 100% correct. And it can lead to so much drama for people, because what I often try to explain to clients is when they ask us, why should I use your services? I always say a move is such a big thing, right? You have so much to consider. If you have a family to move, it's schooling, it's housing, it's how to bring over your goods, it's health insurance, it's flights, it's maybe your pet relocation. All of that is fine and good, but if you don't get your visa, none of this matters, right? So you can have the perfect relocation, but if you don't get your visa, it doesn't matter. A flat, you can always, if a flat is not nice when you arrive, you book yourself into an Airbnb. If your goods don't arrive, you go to the shops and you buy things for the first week or two, right? But a visa, if you don't have your visa, you can't go, So I think that is for me the big thing. And that's why I think discussions like this are so important for people, to give people the power of knowledge, to be aware, to prepare, to have conversations early on with us, for example, to find out, what are the things I can do now already? What must I not do? Because a lot of people get very excited and start a lot of things, and there's certain documents that expire, right? So then we tell them, sorry, you have to actually redo this because it expired. So that's why I think it is so, so important. That's why I'm so glad, the agenda is being pushed more and more by people like you, to really make people aware that there is a little bit to do. It's doable. But you need guidance, and then you just want to have a good preparation for whatever you're doing.
Absolutely. And so you shared a lot of the things that we should not do. And I will transparently say I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes early on, which is one of the reasons why we're hosting this Travel, Move, Do Business virtual conference, because not only did I make a lot of mistakes, I spent a lot of money with those mistakes. And one of the things that I heard years ago was bad decisions cost money, and they do. And when it comes to getting long-term permits to live in South Africa, you want to avoid those at all costs. And like you said, thinking that, there are some countries where you can go and you can file for permits in country. South Africa is not one of those countries. It just isn't, right? And so we are trying to make sure that people get, one, the best information, because I also got misinformation, and I also, like I said, spent a lot of time and a lot of money doing the wrong things. And so can you talk about some of the things you said, right, that like people are doing wrong when it comes to considering filing for a visa to be in South Africa long term?
So I think it starts initially with the timing. A lot of people think it's a very quick process. If you look at the current point, because there's 3 South African embassies in the US. There's one in LA, one in Washington, DC, and one in New York. So up until a few months ago, you could do a walk-in, you didn't need an appointment. You stood in the queue in the morning, you got an appointment. Washington, DC is booked, fully booked with appointments until the 17th of Feb, I think, as of today. So we have clients that assume they can still start schooling with their kids in January because they can still submit the appointment in the application this week. Not going to happen. I think that's the first thing. So it's just understanding what are the timelines, when can I submit, where do I need to submit, because in the US it depends on which state you live in, where you have to submit. So just because Washington, DC is more convenient for you of your flight route maybe, or because you have work there, it doesn't mean you have to submit in Washington. So there's a overview on their website where you have to submit depending on the state. So I think at the moment that is our biggest issue we're having, availability of appointments. So that's the first thing being said. I think then it is maybe not understanding which options are really out there. So what kind of work visas do we have? Because that, for example, they just recently republished requirements for the new general work visa. Hannah is going to speak about this in more detail on the weekend, and it's great and it's exciting, and it's because before that the general work visa was really dead, right? We couldn't really use it. But a lot of websites, a lot of articles are not updated, so people don't know about this, right? It's also, people often have friends or people read in forums, So just because something worked for Ashley, it doesn't work for Kristen. Right, that's a very important point to use. We always talk about it in South Africa. So, here people go to a braai, which is a barbecue. What we call a barbecue is a braai. Yeah. And they speak to all the other foreigners. And then they come to me and say, Kristen, why don't I have this application? Why don't I have this visa? Why didn't you never, why? I said, no, because in your case, it's not possible. So I've learned from that. And what I do often is when the clients come to me and say, Kristen, please want to apply for critical skills visa, I don't then only consult them on a critical skills visa. I start the consultation with, okay, what is actually your goal? What do you want to do? Why do you want to come to South Africa? Because maybe critical skills is actually not the right application for them. Maybe a general work is much more suitable, or maybe they should actually be applying for business visa. You know, all of these things, just because they read something doesn't mean that is what they should be doing. So I think that is the first thing where